Hello, my name is Charles Porter and it's 2.4. So basically, in 2.4 we're basically talking about the difference of aerobic and anaerobic exercise. So here we have Iniesta. So Iniesta is a football player, he's a very talented football player, and he's a midfielder. So as he's a midfielder, he's basically running up and down the pitch constantly. So he's playing as a defender and an attacker. Therefore, he's using both of his energy systems, so he's using both his aerobic and his anaerobic energy systems. This is mainly because so basically football is long in duration and it's medium intensity. So therefore, it's a mixture between, because in aerobic activity it's mainly long duration and low intensity, whereas anaerobic is low in duration and high in intensity. He uses his anaerobic system, for example, for things like sprinting. So if a ball was played through the defence, he would then have to sprint forward and try and receive it. So he'd have to use his anaerobic energy systems. And then aerobic, obviously, for running long distances. Um, for example, we use his aerobic system as the majority of football players, they run 6.4 miles per match. So that's a very long distance. So components of fitness then. So as he's a midfield player for football, he uses speed, power, cardiovascular system, his muscular endurance. Speed is very important because, as I said before, running onto a through ball, you need to have the speed to be able to receive it and beat the defender to the ball first. He also needs to have good power in his legs and also throughout his body, mainly so that he's quick off the mark and he can receive the ball a lot quicker. CV basically so he can run long distances. As I said, an average player runs about 6.4 miles per match, and as Iniesta is one of the best midfielders in the world, he'll be probably running double that sometimes. And then muscular endurance, mainly because it's a 90-minute match, and he's constantly running throughout the whole thing. So his muscles are going to constantly being used. So his leg muscles are constantly going to be used. So training methods then. So as he is a midfielder in football, it's a very specific sort of role. So he needs to have some certain training methods. So here we have our aerobic training methods then. So here we're looking at, as it's aerobic, we're looking at our CV, so cardiovascular endurance and muscular endurance. So as it's aerobic, it's long duration and low intensity. So here we've got 4 different training methods. So we have continuous, interval, fartlek. We've got 3. Sorry, the fit part's not part of it. So we have continuous then. So continuous training basically is basically normal training, but it's long in duration. So say like, for example, just a couple of miles run. So he'll constantly be running and he'll constantly be doing it. Interval sort of different. Interval and fartlek sort of link. So as it's football, you won't always be running. You'll be sort of walking, jogging, and sprinting. So interval sort of having sprinting, so a lot high intensity, and then a short little break afterwards, so maybe a little walk period. And then fartlek's a mixture of all 3 different parts, so it's walking, jogging, and running. So if you were to use the FIT principle, so basically frequency, intensity, time, type. So if you were to do a continuous training, basically if Iniesta's fit and he wants to improve, you could basically increase the distance that he needs to travel, or possibly even reduce the time that he needs to be at a certain point. And then interval training, so you could increase the gap that he's meant to run for. So he's meant to sprint for a longer distance, say like you could change from 50 metres, you can change that into 100 metres, and then have a little break afterwards. Possibly have a longer break or a shorter break. And then fartlek training, you could, once again, you can make the gaps a lot different, a lot longer, or you could even get rid of the walking part. So that he's jogging and sprinting and he's not walking. Or you could literally just reduce, so you could reduce each one depending on his fitness levels. So moving on, we now have the anaerobic training methods. So here we're looking at our his muscular strength, speed, and power. So as it's anaerobic, so it's going to be short in duration, it's going to be high in intensity. That's why we have these three. It's because muscular strength is just a sort of impact, it's very short. So here we've got three different training methods again. So we have plyometrics, interval, and resistance training. So plyometrics are very good for anaerobic training, mainly because they're very short and they're very immediate. So it's very short, but it has a massive impact on his legs and also his upper body. And then we have interval again. So interval on both, mainly because he is sprinting. So when sprinting, you do use your anaerobic system. So here in interval, he'll be using his anaerobic energy system. So therefore, it's obviously a training method as well. And resistance training. Resistance training is really good for football players, mainly because when they're coming up against defenders, they have a lot of resistance against them as they're trying to battle for the ball. They're trying to get each other off balance so they can win the ball. So resistance training is definitely a very good training method, as you can basically sort of practice and improve in those areas. So looking at the fit principle then, so if we were to change some of these, so as I said before about interval, you can change the distance or you could change the time, so you've got to run a certain distance in a short time. And then plyometrics, so then basically for plyometrics you could possibly change the type of plyometric training. So say if you're doing squats, you could do something more intense, so that way his muscles don't just get used to the same exercise. He can change and then increase the intensity. And then you can do resistance training, so you could use different objects, bigger objects, larger objects, objects that are basically a lot stronger, to increase his muscle strength. So now moving on, we now have the adaptations to the CV system. So linking this, basically our CV system, we're linking this to our aerobic system. So here is a chart that we used basically on a test. So this is our VO2 max test. So this is basically this line here, so this is the main data that we got, and this is what happened basically before exercise. This line below is basically the effect on what happens after exercise. So below here we've got the running speed, and then over here we've got the VO2 basically inhaled. Yes, a VO2. So as you can see, as the speed increases, so does the VO2. So this is obviously quite obvious, because mainly as the intensity is increasing, the muscles require more oxygen, so that they can work for longer. So as you can see at the beginning, so at around 7 kilometers per hour, he's running at about, he's inhaling around 15 milliliters of oxygen. So all of that is being spread across his body. So as you can see, after exercise, this is a lot lower, and it possibly might even be below 10. So as the intensity increases, the VO2 increases as well. This is sort of an anomaly, so it should be around here. But yeah, so as the speed increases, so does the amount of oxygen inhaled. So the line below is basically below because after exercise, your muscles and all your organs, they'll be performing a lot better. Therefore, it allows your body to inhale more oxygen, and it allows more oxygen to go down into your capillaries, so that more diffusion can take place. Therefore, more oxygen can be exchanged into the muscles, so there doesn't have to be as much oxygen inhaled. So heart adaptations then. So basically, during exercise, your heart is constantly beating, supplying oxygen and blood around the body. So as you exercise more and more, you therefore get this thing called cardiac hypertrophy. So cardiac hypertrophy is basically the thickening of the myocardium, so the muscle in the heart. So as you can see here, This is basically a heart rate profile. So as you can see, the running distance basically increases, and so does heart rate, as it should do. So if it was an athlete's heart, so as I put in brackets, if it was an athlete's heart, this line would be a lot lower after exercise. So this is pre-exercise. If it was after exercise, it would possibly be below, and you'll possibly be able to increase your heart rate a lot more, so you can go on for longer and longer. So possibly your running speed could increase as well, so you could run at a higher speed. So basically, as your myocardium is thickening and it's becoming a lot stronger, this therefore results in stroke volume and heart rate. Well, stroke volume increasing as there's more blood being pumped out of the heart in one contraction, but however, heart rate is decreasing as your heart doesn't need to pump as much blood, mainly because it's already ejecting a lot of blood in one massive contraction. So what does this have on our heart rate range then? What effect does it have? So basically our heart rate range changes after exercise. So if pre-exercise, your heart rate, as you can see from the graph, it possibly might not reach the area that that you'd want to train at, so it might not reach your maximum heart rate. If you were to train more and more, you can get closer to your maximum heart rate. However, when you're training more and more, you're also decreasing your resting heart rate. So therefore, the gap in the middle increases because you can work your maximum heart rate and you can also lower your resting heart rate. So what does this mean for Q then? So as stroke volume is increasing massively and heart rate is slightly decreasing, cardiac output is still basically being increased. This is mainly because there's more blood being ejected from the heart. It's quite simple, per minute, because there's more being forced out. So now, talking about blood, now let's move on to blood adaptations. So after exercise, we basically have this thing called capillarization. So capillarization basically means there's more capillaries being formed, basically helping with diffusion. So as it's helping with diffusion, this therefore means there's more oxygen being transported to the working muscles, making them work for longer periods, and basically achieving more. As there's more capillaries as well, this therefore means that the CO2, so the carbon dioxide, is therefore being diffused back into the capillaries, and there's more of it being taken out through carbon-aminohemoglobin and through the plasma in the blood, and it's therefore being transported out of the body. So as there's more capillaries, there's more oxygen being diffused into the muscles, and there's more waste products being taken out of our body. Therefore, after exercise, the volume and plasma also so it makes it more fluid. So therefore, the blood is therefore able to basically transport a lot quicker, and it's a lot more. It's not as dense, so the viscosity of it is a lot lower. So before exercise, the viscosity it's quite thick. It will be quite thick compared to after exercise, as the blood can basically flow a lot faster. So what does this mean for our general health then? So as the blood is a lot less thick and it can move a lot quicker, this therefore results in you're being less likely to have coronary heart disease and things like, and you're less likely to have hypertension and arteriosclerosis as well. So now moving on, we now have our respiratory system adaptations. So our respiratory system then. So after exercise, what happens to our ventilation and breathing rate? So in exercise, our ventilation increases. This is obviously because we need more oxygen during exercise, basically to transport to our working muscles so they can work. So therefore it increases. If it was after training, however, ventilation will then we won't have to inhale as much. So that would therefore decrease after exercise. So what are the benefits to an aerobic performer? So looking at an aerobic performer, so here, So the running speed will increase over time, as we said before, so it's the same graph.